Level 1. The Missing Fortune. It was 2:17 a.m. The city was almost completely silent. Thousands of people were asleep. But inside one of the country's largest financial institutions, an emergency alarm suddenly went off. A senior employee ran into the control room. Something is wrong. Everyone turned toward the giant financial dashboard. At first, the numbers looked normal. Then one account disappeared, then another, then hundreds more. Within minutes, 10,000 crore had vanished. Nobody understood what had happened. There was no explosion, no broken door, no missing employee, no obvious sign of a robbery. The money had simply disappeared. The company's executives immediately contacted the authorities. News channels began reporting the shocking story. Were 10,000 crore missing from financial network? The country woke up to the news. But there was one strange detail. The money hadn't been transferred to a single account. It had apparently been divided across dozens of financial institutions around the world. And whoever had done it had left almost no obvious trace. The next morning, Noel arrived at the company's headquarters. Unlike the executives around him, he wasn't panicking. He was a financial investigator, known for noticing details that everyone else ignored. His manager handed him a thick investigation file. Find out where the money went. Noel opened the file. For hours, he studied transaction records, timestamps, employee reports, and security logs. Everything looked almost perfect. Too perfect. Then, Noel noticed something unusual. One transaction had occurred exactly 11 seconds before the entire system reported the theft. He stared at the timestamp. That's impossible. He checked it again. The transaction wasn't sending money out. It was creating something, a hidden financial record. Someone had apparently planted a clue. Before the Rs 10,000 crore disappeared, Noel leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he realized something terrifying. This wasn't a simple robbery. Someone had planned this for years. That evening, Noel left the headquarters and walked through a crowded city street. Rain began falling. He stopped beside an old newspaper stand. A strange envelope was waiting there. There was no name on it. Only 3 words were written on the front. "You're too late." Noel slowly opened the envelope. Inside, there was a photograph. It showed 5 people standing together outside a luxury building. One of them was a senior executive from Noel's own company. Noel looked at the photograph in disbelief. Then his phone suddenly rang. Unknown number. He answered. A distorted voice said, "If you want the money back." A brief silence. "Find the 6th person." The call ended. Noel looked at the photograph again. There were only 5 people. He whispered, "Who is the 6th?" And somewhere across the city, someone was watching him. Level 2. The 6th person. The photograph wouldn't leave Noel's mind. 5 people. 5 powerful executives. And yet, someone had told him to find the 6th person. The next morning, Noel returned to headquarters. He secretly compared the photograph with the company's employee records. 4 names matched, but the 5th person wasn't an employee. That made Noel suspicious. He enlarged the photograph. In the background, behind the 5 executives, he noticed something almost invisible. A small company logo. Noel searched the logo. It belonged to a private investment company that had officially closed 8 years ago. But there was something strange. Its financial records were still active. Someone was still using the company. That evening, Noel visited the company's old office building. The building looked abandoned. Broken windows, dusty hallways, old business signs. But one floor was different. Fresh electricity, fresh security cameras, and a locked glass door. Noel stepped closer. Someone was inside. He suddenly heard voices. "The money has already moved." Another voice replied, "Then move the remaining accounts before Noel finds us." Noel froze. They knew his name. He quietly stepped away from the door. But his phone suddenly vibrated. A message appeared. You should have stayed home. Noel looked around. The hallway was empty. Then the lights went out. Complete darkness. He heard footsteps approaching, slowly. One step at a time. Noel ran down the stairs. Behind him, someone followed. He escaped through a side entrance and disappeared into the crowded street. But before leaving, he had managed to photograph one important document. It contained a list of international accounts. And at the bottom, there was a single name. Noel. He stared at it in disbelief. Why was his own name on the list? Later that night, Noel returned to his apartment. He locked the door, closed the curtains, and placed every piece of evidence on his table. The photograph, the financial records, the mysterious company logo, and the document containing his name. Suddenly, he noticed something. The 5 executives in the photograph weren't standing randomly. They were standing around an empty space, a space large enough for another person. The 6th person had been there, but someone had deliberately removed them from the photograph. Noel whispered, "Who were you?" Then his phone received one final message. "Tomorrow, you'll meet the 6th person." Noel looked toward his apartment window. A black car was parked across the street. Someone was sitting inside, watching him. Level 3, the 6th person. The black car remained outside Noel's apartment. For almost an hour, nobody got out. Noel watched from behind the curtains. Then the car disappeared. But Noel knew something. They were getting closer. He spent the entire night studying the photograph. He enlarged every detail, every face, every building, every reflection in the windows. Then he noticed something. A reflection in the glass door. A 6th person, standing behind the 5 executives. Noel froze. The 6th person wasn't visible directly, only in the reflection. He ran the image through his investigation system. After several hours, the face became clear. Noel recognized him immediately. It was Victor Kane, a former financial architect who had disappeared from the public eye 8 years earlier. But there was another shocking discovery. Victor wasn't working alone. He had connections to the same investment company whose logo appeared in the photograph. Noel followed the trail to an underground financial network. The network had been quietly moving enormous amounts of money for years, and the R10,000 crore theft was only the beginning. The next morning, Noel received an anonymous location, an abandoned train station on the edge of the city. He went there alone. The station was almost completely empty. Old signs hung from the ceiling. Wind moved through the broken windows. Then he heard footsteps. Victor Kane stepped out of the darkness. Noel stared at him. "Why did you steal the money?" Victor smiled. "I didn't." Noel looked confused. Victor continued. "The money was never stolen. It was moved. There's a difference." He handed Noel a small black folder. Inside was a list of companies, banks, and investment groups. At the bottom was one terrifying sentence. The R10,000 crore was insurance. Noel looked up. Insurance against what? Victor's expression changed. Before he could answer, the lights across the station suddenly turned off. A loud metallic sound echoed from the tunnel. Victor whispered, "They found us." Several black vehicles appeared outside. Men in dark clothing surrounded the station. Victor grabbed the folder. "Run!" Noel and Victor escaped through an underground maintenance tunnel. Behind them, footsteps echoed through the darkness. They finally reached an old control room. Victor locked the door. Then he revealed the truth. The R10,000 crore wasn't the real target. Someone had deliberately created the entire heist to hide something much bigger. Noel stared at him. What could possibly be bigger than a 10,000 crore? Victor looked toward the city skyline. The entire country's financial system. Noel realized this wasn't just a robbery. It was a plan to control money itself, and he had just stepped into the middle of it. Level 4, the final reveal. The underground control room was silent. Noel stared at the giant screens. Banks, investment companies, government institutions. Thousands of financial connections covered the walls. Victor finally explained the truth. The Rs 10,000 crore wasn't stolen for personal wealth. It was being used as a decoy, while everyone focused on the missing money. A much larger financial operation was happening in the background. Victor pointed toward the screens. The real target isn't the money. It's the system that moves it. Noel understood. Someone wanted to create chaos across the financial network, then use that chaos to manipulate billions of rupees. But there was still one question. Who is behind it? Victor opened the final file. A list of names appeared. Noel recognized several of them. Bank executives, investment managers, technology company directors. And at the bottom, one name shocked him, the CEO of Noel's own company. Noel couldn't believe it. The person who had hired him had been involved from the beginning. Suddenly, every screen went black. A countdown appeared. 10, 9, 8. Victor whispered. They found the control room. Noel looked at the evidence. They had only minutes instead of running. Noel made a decision. He connected the evidence to the authorities' secure investigation network. Every document, every transaction record, every name, everything was transmitted. The countdown reached 0. But nothing happened. The attackers had expected Noel to panic. They hadn't expected him to expose everything first, across the city. Police teams began moving toward multiple locations. Executives were taken into custody. Financial investigators froze suspicious accounts. News channels interrupted their broadcasts. Breaking news. Massive R10,000 crore financial conspiracy exposed. The truth finally came out. The money was recovered. The criminal network collapsed, and the people responsible were arrested. Weeks later, Noel stood before a huge press conference. Hundreds of journalists surrounded him. One reporter asked, "How did you solve the biggest financial mystery in the country's history?" Noel smiled. "I didn't follow the money. I followed the people who were hiding it." The room erupted in applause. Months later, Noel returned to the same city street where he had received the mysterious envelope. The newspaper stand was still there. The rain had stopped. The city lights reflected across the pavement. He looked at the empty street and smiled. The case was finally over. But before leaving, his phone received one final message. "You solved the first game." Noel stopped. Another message appeared. "There are bigger games ahead," then quietly put the phone away. Because he knew the Rs 10,000 crore heist was never the real story. It was only the beginning.